Let's roll with it.
No, no, cut two. Cut two. Andy, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, brother. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Good. Had a good night of football. Been a long week so far, but we're here. We're recording a podcast and brand new guest tonight. I told listeners last week we have somebody brand new on here. Nice hat, Jake.
Thank you. Thank you. Go blue.
Hell yeah, man. I know we had kind of a rough showing on Saturday, but you know, it's a new team. We're getting there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a little too much hype going into the season. A lot of losses. Just too much that had to be worked out to expect them to be, really competing with Texas, at least in my eyes. But it was still a little bit less of a showing than I would like to see. That's for sure. Reminiscent of old Iowa, but hopefully the offense can figure itself out sometime.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. We had a very good run of wins, and seeing a loss at home is kind of new. And but man, no, you're got a great hat on, and you're here from Michigan, so appreciate your support. Jake Bollinger out of
Grass
Jackson
Lake.
County,
Yep.
Grass Lake. All
Yep.
right,
Jackson County.
all right. So we kind of have Michigan kind of covered here tonight. We have I'm not too far from you, Jake, at all. Probably 45 minutes maybe.
Yep.
So we're both kind of southern Michigan, South Central. Got Andy up in Traverse City, praying for rain.
Yeah, don't rain here anymore. Sahara Desert of Traverse City. It's great. It's crazy. Crazy how dry it is. I mean, I don't think it's as dry as Ohio, but it's dry.
Yeah, Al's complaining too. You said earlier before we hit record, you were doing a rain dance, and you might trade a kid for some rain. Is that accurate?
Yes, yeah, yeah. I'd sell them, but you're gonna bring them back and want a refund. I know that much. So, except my daughter did want to tell you hi, Jared. She did want to tell you
Oh,
hi
she's the
today.
best. Your kids are awesome, man. Love hanging out with them when I'm up there. I'm a big kid guy, so tend to get
Yeah,
along with most of the kids. But your daughter's a sweetheart. Have a good time every time I see her. She's getting big too, by the way. She looks like
dude, it's outrageous. How
9 or 10.
fast,
She looks like she's like 9.
dude? She like all of a sudden, like in August, like grew up.
Yeah.
Like went from my little girl to just a little girl. It was crazy, but I guess it's got to happen. So I get to be like you, Jared. They get even older, and now you got to worry about other things. So you know,
Let's just stop that right there then, Andy. Okay, you son of a gun. But you're
let's
you're
talk
not wrong.
let's talk habitat.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Jake, you have some kids, right? Or you have a kid at least. I know you
Yeah,
were doing some
I
Boy
got
Scout
two.
stuff earlier, right?
Yeah, yeah. Me and my boy do the Cub Scout stuff right now. We enjoy it, getting out there and doing all that stuff that in the outdoors and whatnot. And then I have a daughter, 4-year-old daughter.
Wow. And
Yeah.
how old is your son?
Just turned 7.
Okay, yeah, you're in the woods too. Yeah,
Yep.
you're in the thick of it, as I like to
Yep.
say. How's Cub Scouts going? Are you guys slinging popcorn, or what were you doing?
Yeah, yeah. We were at the local farmers market tonight out there slinging some popcorn. We do it to all they call them scout bucks or whatever, the money that's made from them for the Cub Scouts. We put it back into the like the tuition fund or whatever to help other families go to events and stuff like that. Some of it can be a little expensive and driving and stuff like that. Like a couple weekends ago, we stayed overnight at the USS Silversides up in Muskegon, so that was a blast. So it's cool to do that kind of stuff with all those kids, man. And like you said, I'm a kid dad. I love playing with them, entertaining them, and having a blast with them. I guess I'm a kid myself still, so.
Dude,
Same
that's
here,
awesome.
buddy.
That's awesome. That's what it's all about. I just recorded a podcast right before this with Jake Bush talking about his transition from, full-time paid hunter to full-time dad. And it was really cool. It was a good talk. But yeah,
Oh man.
don't all
I can't
good.
wait to
So
listen to that one, Andy, that over on the Deer Camp podcast. That'll be a good one, man. You've been slinging them out, dude.
yeah, it's become a passion project. So yeah, I'm enjoying the hell out of it. I'm
Fall
can't
should
wait
be
for this.
better, right?
Yeah, dude, the deer camp tour is gonna be pretty fun. Pretty
That's
That
fun.
sounds awesome.
that sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out if I can make it down to you, Jake. I'm working on some dates here, that's for sure.
Hey, man, let me know. Like I said, the invitation's there for you.
I
I
appreciate
know.
that.
I
Yeah,
know.
Jake, I don't Jake did we did that Food Plot Friday thing this summer, which was a lot of fun. I appreciate that, Jake. Thanks for that.
No, not a problem, man. It
What is
was,
that?
just fun sharing, what we're doing. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. I'm not an expert at anything. It's more of just to show other people, hey, get out there and do it, and go have fun with it more than anything. Don't stress over doing it right or wrong. It's better to do it than not. And I really enjoyed the invitation to work with you and do that kind of stuff, man. Thank you.
Heck yeah, well, we're gonna do it again next summer for sure. To answer your question, Jared, it was the guys, the Habitat listeners that don't know, Jake and I did a food plot Friday. Basically it's like a little minute reel talking about what we were doing for Habitat work on, like my farm and then his farm and our different, he's down in southern Michigan, I'm in northern Michigan. It was just kind of a little fun thing. I enjoyed the heck out of it. I started it the year before, did it by myself. It was kind of it's not really structured. It's just kind of there to show what we're doing, kind of just basically a weekly update.
Awesome. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I just want to get an explanation out there for those who may not have seen it yet. That's kind of where I learned about Jake, honestly. It's through you, Andy. And Ashley's a vitalized seed dealer as well. Rock on. Big Habitat podcast listener for a long time too. So, these are the type of guys that like we try to surround ourselves with and just be a part of. This community is awesome. I know there's a bunch of big 200-inch deer killers out there, and you guys, that's all great. But the rest of us are doing the small property management, trying to make something happen. And that's exactly who I'm sitting with here tonight with you two. So I appreciate that. Um, Andy, were you ever a Cub Scout or a Boy Scout?
I was. I
Were
was
you?
a Boy Scout. I don't remember. Probably sixth grade was when I got out of it. I would
Yeah.
assume. I'm thinking going into middle school because I don't remember. I remember going camping. God, no, I must have been in middle school. I know I didn't go all the way through, but yeah, I did do it for a long time. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's why I thought that was interesting that Jake was out there doing that. I was a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout till eighth grade. Um, Matter of fact, one time we were camping up at Camp Gerber in Fremont, Michigan, and there was a huge straight line windstorm that came through. We're all intense. We had like huge oak trees like this drop next to our tents. Like we could have died. Like
Oh
Oh,
for real.
wow.
I remember being scared of thunderstorms for like 2 years after that. Me and my buddy were just in this tent, like just like praying we didn't die. And then it was on my birthday. It was May 31st. So you go back way back when Grand Haven got wrecked with trees. People who are from that area probably know the storm I'm talking about. But yeah, I wish I would have done it all the way through. I really do. It's pretty cool. And Jake, were you in the Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts too, or no? You just think it's a good
No,
idea?
I wasn't. It was just I remember wanting to bad, but like where I grew up, I was in the middle of nowhere, and a
Gotcha.
single mom, so it was like pretty much impossible to make that happen. So when he expressed interest in doing it, because we're outdoorsy naturally, so it
Sure.
surprised me, and I was like, all right, let's go for it. And we've had a blast doing it.
That's
Heck yeah,
awesome.
that's awesome.
Good for you. Heck yeah. Um, well, kind of how we start these things. We all know who Andy is. He's been on here a few times, more than a few. And Jake, let's hear about you, where you're from, kind of, your background, and then maybe after that we'll get to where you live, your property details, and kind of let us know what you're working with, so how we can relate to that.
All right. Well, Jake Bollinger, Jackson County, Michigan. What I consider large ag for Michigan, small blocks of wood, stuff like that, not huge blocks. North of me a little ways, there's some real nice state land large blocks, but mostly ag around me. Always been down here in southern Michigan, Jackson County, Washtenaw County area. Born and raised into an awesome hunting tradition family. My dad didn't hunt, oddly enough, but my brother got me into hunting, but my grandpa hunted. We had an awesome opening day get together, in the morning. 30, 40 people would come to our butcher shop, which my grandpa had like, a commercial butcher shop basically at our house or at his house because we would do hogs, all that kind of stuff. And we would just have a shindig, man. It was just a blast. And at the time when I was younger, it wasn't anything about QDMA. It was just go out and shoot some deer and have a blast. So of course, classic Michigan guy there. And then of course, we transitioned into my brother shot of just an absolute giant 200-inch buck in Washington. Yeah, just an absolute monster. And it just
Wow.
totally changed the trajectory, right? We had shot some decent ones, but it changed the trajectory of us, and that's when we really dove into QDMA. 1999 would have been the year that we really kind of got into it, and I've been just kind of nerding out a little bit here and there ever since in the deer world, and then it's just been the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years or so. It's been just like all consuming. So, here I am.
Okay, so a couple things that sparked my interest there, and Andy, sorry if I get too far ahead and maybe one of your deer camp podcasts coming up. Tell me more about your grandpa's butcher shop and deer camp and what that looked like with you as a kid. Like, I mean, it's like September right now, and I'm getting fired up when I hear deer camp. So
Yeah,
tell me a little bit
yeah.
about what that looked like and what maybe what that meant to you when you were, yay big.
Oh, looking back on it, it was everything. I mean, it was truly life defining. We had so many great memories in that butcher shop from all kinds of animals, processing, making our own sausage. So the butcher shop is I don't know the square footage, but it's massive. It's tinned inside, so we can clean it real easy. Concrete, has a meat track from the door all the way into the walk-in cooler. Commercial Hobart grinders, saws. I mean, spoiled. I won't lie. It was absolutely awesome. Every different knife you could imagine. Had a gas stove where my grandpa would fry up, back straps on the fresh. It was just absolutely awesome. It was a cool event. Everybody would come over all the time, and everybody celebrated everybody's, harvest. And we even had a DNR officer that lived right down the road. Her name was Cherie. She would stop in all the time. We were good with her and everything, and she would have a good time with us. And yeah, it was a blast. So it's interesting. Now I've made my own butcher shop at my house. So now I have not quite to my grandpa's standards, but it's still got everything, basically a commercial processing place right at my place. So I can whack and stack some doughs, man. I got a problem with that down here. So I'm gonna thin some out.
Heck yeah.
No, no kidding. What do you mean your own butcher shop? Do you have a walk-in cooler or like what's this whole thing look like?
Yeah, so I'm a refrigeration person by trade, been
Okay.
in it since I was basically 14 years old, put my own walk-in cooler in. I've got a grinder, a commercial grinder that if you put your leg in it, you're in trouble. I mean, it's just massive. Got a Hobart bandsaw. I've kind of followed in my grandpa's footsteps in the farmhouse in the farm that I bought, or me and the wife bought, had this cool old stove, but it was converted to electric. I put that in there so that way we could have, frying up some stuff, fridge, all everything you can think of, the small grinders, stainless steel tables, sinks. I just wanted it so that buddies would start that camp feeling again because I'm just like Andy is. Like I loved it as a kid growing up, and then it kind of died off. Once my grandpa passed away, people got older with their kids, and then I just said I want to bring it back. So I'm bringing it back for me and my buddies and anybody else that wants to come over and do it.
I love that. I think you have to somebody has to take the initiative to make the spot.
Yep.
Like my buddy Jordan in Illinois, and Jordan, like
Yep.
he's the guy. When you shoot a deer, you go to his place, you hang it up, we all hang out. Our deer camps do the same thing. I feel like Jake down here, I don't have that near me, that guy. I
Yep.
might be that guy, kinda. I got a barn and we hang them up and we drink beer, but like the whole deer camp thing, I feel like is either getting old or it's up north. And
Yep.
to have a spot like you have in your area, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I put it out to all my buddies, around. I said November 14th, the night before, my place, bring the kids. I want it to be a family event.
Cool.
I don't want it to be just the guys. I do want the kids involved because that's a passion of mine, truthfully, is getting my kids and other kids involved in the outdoors. So I wanted it to be family friendly. I got a TV, I got a couple of recliners so the kids can hang out, a pellet stove to keep it warm, try to make it comfortable for everybody and try to make a reason for people to come over and hang out, I
Yeah.
guess.
I love it, man. Andy, what do you think? Does that pass a deer camp test?
Dude, you're in. You're in. You're doing the right thing. You're bringing it back. That's what we're doing. What
Yep.
how does Trump say? We're bringing it back, man. We're bringing it back. We're bringing it back.
Yep.
But
I
yeah,
love
Yep.
it.
no, that's cool, man. You got me beat. I've got a nice little kitchen, but not anything like that. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah,
That's
well, we do a
awesome.
ton of gardening and canning and all that kind of stuff, food preservation. So, I wanted a place where I could, double dip on that as well. Have a place where you keep the kitchen somewhat clean and all that kind of stuff. So it works out pretty well for all year round.
I like where your head's at. What do you do for a walk-in cooler? Do you have something like that set up?
Yeah, it's an actual room. It's a bone coil and condensing system. It's an actual true refrigeration system, a walk-in
Nice.
cooler. It's my yeah, sister-in-law. Yeah, sister-in-law owns a flower shop, and she changed out the walk-in cooler at her, flower shop. So I said, hey, so since this still functions, perfect. Bingo. Brought it home, and there was already this little room, like my barn that I bought here, the shop that's next to the house was set up so perfectly for this to just transition into what it was. And I remember as soon as I walked in, some of the stainless steel equipment was already there. The people, the old owners used it kind of as a small butcher shop, but it wasn't clean really. And I said, boom, here's my butcher shop. I'm painting it, I'm sealing it up, I'm doing the floors. This is it.
Wow.
Awesome.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I helped some my friend Corey. You guys have heard of Corey, probably. He's been on the show a few times. Do some dope harvesting earlier this year, and man, what we would give to have something like that nearby, just make life so much easier. Or
Hey, Corey's
anybody,
only a few miles from me.
He's not, yeah, you're right. He's not far at all. He's
Yep.
not far at all.
Yep.
That's awesome. Very cool. Let's hear about the farm you and your wife bought together. Rewind it back to when you bought it, what it looked like, how big it is, all the details to kind of give us like the where you started picture.
All right. Well, I mean, so to kind of start hunting in this area, I started hunting my wife's family farm, in-laws farm, mostly ag with a few pockets of swamp and some, a little bit of timber here and there, but not much. It was about 90% tillable. And I butted up to this swamp and I'd hunt around this swamp and I'd always see this like oak finger that projected into this swamp on what I call the Browns farm. That's the family that owned the farm before me. And I seen some massive bucks running that oak ridge. And I'm like, I remember telling my wife long ago, and she'll quote me, I said, I will sell my left testicle to buy that farm if it ever comes for sale. So we're, flash forward to 2019, 2020. We're kind of looking for land. I guess 2019, we're looking for land. We have the Browns approach us about this piece that touches up to the in-laws farm, about selling it. And it was just a price we couldn't beat. It's 80 acres. The house needed to be, total gut and remodel or whatever. And the barns needed a lot of work and stuff. So it was a fixer upper, but it's mostly tillable. I'd say probably 80% tillable, 90%
Okay.
tillable. And we bought it. It was like, luckily we had bought a house in the foreclosure industry market, so it was dirt cheap. We put a pile of money into it, made some money, rolled it back to the farm, and we did buy this on our own. It wasn't inherited or nothing like that.
Deal.
But so our 80 touches into my in-laws 120. So
Wow.
their property runs uh, east-west. My property runs north-south, so it kind of makes an L, if you will. And then I have a lease or hunting rights, I'll say, for helping the neighbor farmer do chores around his house and all that kind of stuff, which is mostly tillable as well, but kind of locks up about, I'm going to guesstimate it's like 350 acres, but again, it's 90% tillable. So but that's my little hunt, and I'm calling my farm the Altered 80 because I'm taking it from being stripped ag land into 95% deer oasis habitat, whatever, and just having it be an experimental ground where I just want to have fun with it. Like one of the biggest reasons why I'm a huge supporter of the Habitat podcast and a patron member and all that stuff is because of how much I've learned on that and all those talks. So I want to go out and just start playing with it and doing it and videoing more and doing all that kind of stuff. So it's rewarding for me to build something for my kids. That's what I'm kind of looking to do.
Couldn't agree more, man. Well said too. And we definitely always appreciate your support and the longtime listenership. Um, why did you get the Altered 80? Where did that name come from? And how long have you owned it for? And kind of like when did you come up with your plan, if you
So
will?
we bought it in 2020 and we literally had to have like approval to sign on this house in property because it was during the lockdown. During the COVID lockdown, the height of it, we had no house. We sold our other house. We're basically homeless. We're like, no, this has to go through. We have no opening in sight. That's not happening. Well, we did. We got it all signed and all that kind of stuff. And the first couple of years, I did sign a lease with the farmer, which again is the farmer next door, longtime family friend, to keep farming the ground for 5 years because I had more priorities, right? The house and the barn was my priorities over spending money on the farm. Well, now the house is pretty well done. We're at the end of the contract, so this year is my year to go buck wild. This spring is starting to just go switchgrass. I just bought a drill the other day so I can
Nice.
start prepping for switchgrass and drilling in a, who knows? I'm gonna just have fun and experiment with all kinds of crap, habitat mixes, pollinator mixes. I'm just gonna go and have a blast with it. Well, I want to do a big, huge wildflower patch right behind the house so the wife and kids can look out behind the house and see that. So yeah, but I came up with the altered 80 just one day I was out back and I was cutting down some swamp birch, doing some TSI, getting them junk trees out of there, and I just remember saying, "Man, I'm altering this farm so much," and it was like, boom, altered 80. It kind of fits. It's 80
I love
acres,
it.
altered 80. I said, you know what? Everybody seems to dub everything anymore, so hashtag altered 80.
Guilty.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, it's just, it was a good way for me to keep track of things, of what I'm doing with it and stuff as well. And I'm doing this more for me to look back on, than anything. Not trying to tell someone what to do, but just have a blast, record what I'm doing and learn from my mistakes and learn from other people's and maybe do something a little bit different than the next guy and help them out.
I love it. Andy, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, that's great, man. Absolutely. I mean, we're kind of all doing the same thing. I mean, yours got the altered 80. I mean, you've got Jared, you've got the Northern 70 that you're doing the same thing. I've got the Farm 50, I guess. I don't have a name for it, camp, I guess. But
Yours is, yeah, yours because the beach.
the
Altered
The
beach.
80.
Yeah, there
beach.
we go. Jesus. Yeah, we're all doing this with our acreage here, and we're all, let's be honest, we're gonna take some for us, but it's a lot of it for our kids, man. I mean, there's a lot of the stuff that I figure I only got like a couple years before I'm just the dragger anymore. So get it ready
Yeah.
for these kids. I'm excited.
Yeah, I do a lot of, well, I don't want to say I do a lot of, but I've done some and getting into it more air pruning boxes, collecting acorns and growing all my own seedlings and all that stuff so that me and the kids can grow them from, acorn to seedlings to planting them out back and watching them grow. One of my buddies said that the other day, he's like, well, what are you planting oaks for? You're never going to see them. I was like, well, for one, I'm 40. So 20 years from now, they start producing. I am going to, hopefully, geez, knock on wood, I see something out of them, but I'm like, that's not my attitude, man. If I can go out and pile up a bunch of white oaks and a bunch of sweet bur oaks and stuff out here and make a cool little oasis for the future, that's what I'm shooting for, try to make it native as possible and have a blast while doing it for the kids mostly, and of course myself selfishly too.
Well, and I love all that, and not to get too sidetracked, but there's also hybrid oaks that'll throw acorns with a lot less than 20 years. So,
Yep.
FYI, let's talk about that offline.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm doing the same thing. I have seedlings that I grew last winter on my back deck right now. They're like 3 foot tall. They've been sitting there all summer waiting to get planted. Same deal. Same deal. Like we have a lot of synergies between the three of us here, and with the HP listeners. Like everybody here is doing the same thing that we're talking about,
Mhm.
trying to make their piece of heaven better.
Yep.
And like when you figure out that it works, it actually makes your hunting better and your wildlife increase. Like it's hard not to do it. So this is awesome. What type of drill did you end up getting?
John Deere 8300. So
Wow,
it's not
very
it's not a
nice.
no-till, unfortunately. The no-till just wasn't in the cards. I just didn't have the money to put into that right now. But it was super clean, barn stored, and the price was dirt cheap. I got it for half of what they're selling for. So it was just one of those things like, if not now, when? I know everything I'm getting ready to do. I've started, I've used the Jackson County Conservation Club's rented drill several times. And it's just sometimes it gets a little difficult. And of course, with like you just mentioned, everybody out here is doing that kind of stuff now, which is awesome. All my neighbors are doing it too. It's just some of the key times are getting very difficult to get a hold of. Last year, the machine was beat up pretty good, so I wrenched on it for a couple of days before working, and so it was one of those things where I said, you know what, I'm gonna just invest in my own little drill and try to open up my own window of taking care of myself and doing all this. So
Amen, dude. Would that technically be a grain drill?
yep.
Okay.
Yep, it's a grain drill, but it's got grass seed boxes on the front, so that's
That's why I was
why.
confused. That's why I wanted to ask. I'm like, how can
Yeah,
you use switchgrass with a grain drill? But okay.
yeah, yeah. So that's what attracted me to it is it had the factory grass seed boxes on it. It's actually one of my best friends, the farmer that I kind of farmhand with. He sent it to me. He goes, "Dude, you've been saying you want it. Here it is." And I was like, "Oh man." And I'm watching here. I mean, it was an auction, and I'm watching it, and I'm watching it, and I'm watching. I'm like, I can't watch this go, this cheap. I said, I just can't. And so next thing I know, I'm heading out, pulling her home.
Have you planted anything with it yet? Any vitalized with it yet? Anything?
No,
Because
no,
I
no.
know, I know guys, Ryan Jackson been on here before, Indiana, other guys as well who use regular grain drills if your soil can handle it. And they'll even use it no-till. It's up to you on how you want to do it, but they've used regular grain drills if your soil's soft enough, or you can till it up first. They work awesome. They
Huh,
work awesome.
interesting. Good. Well, that's good to feedback. I mean, of course, all the local farmers and stuff pretty much all use them back in the day, and they're like, oh yeah, they're awesome little machines. There's tons of them around, so parts and pieces are easy to get a hold of,
Yep.
generally easy to work on, so it's like dummy like me can, figure it out. But yeah, it was just something, again, just to go out and play around on and go out and make some cool designs in switchgrass.
Yeah, I found your parcel and now I have an idea of what you're dealing with here. Yeah, I would do tons of native grasses too. Have you looked into CRP at all in Michigan? Any idea on that? Maybe you don't like the government at all. I don't know, but what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I am anti-government. No, I mean, of course, I have looked into some of the programs. I've kicked around, I've molded around, and
I
I
don't even know
just
if we have a CRP opening in Michigan. I have no idea. I'm just
there's
curious.
a few different programs, the equip programs, stuff like that. There's several of them out there that I looked into and had them look at. There are some that the equip I think would probably fit what I'm doing pretty good, but at the same time, I just didn't like some of the restrictions and how they wanted stuff planted, and I want to have fun with this. I want this to be my canvas of
Cool.
just go out and splatter stuff wherever I feel fit. And if it fails, it's my fault and I can change it. That kind of, that's just how I envision it, is just having a ton of fun with it over the years and not having to be so handcuffed, I guess, over it. So,
Yeah, I was just curious. There are a lot of good programs out there, but there are requirements that go along with them, as you mentioned. Um, and I mean, are you gonna go? You think a lot of switch, or I guess before we get into that, let's hear more about. You mentioned the property details in terms of tillable versus cover or swamp. Give us, explain us the 80.
so it runs north-south. The northeast corner is, 15, 20-ish acres of cattail
That's
and
amazing.
scattered tamarack, with a rim, around the outside. That's your northern spice bush, your swamp white oaks, stuff where it's a little less water. And then you get into, some of the swamp grasses, the birch, of course, I'm cutting every one of those I can possibly find, getting it either girdled and standing dead or on the ground and rotting as fast as possible. So this winter, the chainsaw will be getting the work out. Um, and then the rest of it, so there is one little block of timber in the northwest corner that's only about 5 acres that I TSI'd through pretty good. And then this winter, I'm going to get the cherry out of it, cut all the cherry out. There's a pond right in between those two little sections. So it's a natural funnel from the ag land in to the north that it kind of pushes them down around that pond. So it's just a perfect little funnel and a pinch point. So I'm really looking to use that northern ridge, I guess I'll call it, or rim, to connect those two blocks of cover. That's my main goal next spring, so that way they can travel from northwest to southeast in a continual block of cover. With that, using the wind a little bit to my advantage, my predominant northwest wind. So, but yeah, I'm looking to do pretty much like I said. I think I'm going to do 80 to 85% of the ag. I'm going to convert and just start doing a bunch of switchgrass borders. I'm going to do a little bit of the Tony LaPratt type mentality where I'm making some bedrooms and some hallways and some things like that. I'm going to try to play with a little bit of everybody's ideas and some of my own and videotape and see what happens. So it's rolling hills.
Is it?
It's
Okay.
not super flat. It does have some rolling hills and it drops off. So from the west side is the higher side of the farm. That's currently alfalfa, which is a north-south 20 acres or so, 15 acres of alfalfa. And then there's a cornfield that borders the swamp into the alfalfa. So it's just really got a little trifecta of stuff going on right there. But I've got so much ag around, I'm missing the cover and missing
Okay.
upland cover, like so my swamp, if it rains in the fall heavy, it's blown out. Any little high spot that they were betting on all summer long is underwater and they're not in it anymore. So I found I don't even remember who I heard it from, but years ago somebody was putting straw bales next to like small brush clumps and tamarack bases to create beds, and I started doing some of that, to create some high spots, and it worked. So I'm going to continue to keep going on that trend. So trying to get some high and out of water bedding is my number one goal right now.
I was going to kind of ask you what some of your handicaps were. That's one of them right there. Is too much water flooding out your swamp. That's huge for anybody who has a swamp. You have too much water, they're not there. Upland habitat. You mentioned that. Somebody told me one time, and I said this before. I can't remember who told me. Upland habitat's like some of the best deer habitat, and I'd agree. A little overgrown field with some taller grasses, some
Mhm.
shrubs, some little trees starting. I mean, it just feels bucky, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, are you gonna be like do you have like neighbors peeking in? Are you trying to block neighbors? Do you have
Oh
lack of
man.
cover? You mentioned cover being oh,
Yeah,
I hit
my
something.
my my
I
west
hit something.
neighbor is something else. I'm just gonna leave it at that. It's
Okay.
something else. Yeah, so I've actually got a pile of conifers coming. I'm going to be putting, a conifer wall in, of course, in a switchgrass for the quicker cover, but some long-term conifer walls and brush walls to block off as much as possible. Yeah, unfortunately, he has a herd of dogs, and I'm not underestimating when I say herd,
Oh
and they
no.
are deer chasers constantly. Yeah, it's not a good situation. There's a bunch of other drama that goes on, but just trying to stay away from them. And luckily, the vast majority of the deer don't come from that direction. And it's kind of, it's all fenced off horse pasture for the vast majority of it. So the deer tend not to use that area. So again, that's why my pond and that small block of woods is such a nice pinch because the deer have to go around those horse pasture wide open. And so yeah, that's yeah, the neighbors. He's something.
Is that the same neighbor with the horses that get out and
That's the neighbor. Yeah.
okay. All
Yeah,
right.
it's a every 2 week occurrence of 20 horses out eating my switchgrass and eating my alfalfa and corn. And yeah, it's a drama fest, but we'll get through it.
What do you
Absolutely.
do about dogs and horses? I've heard of guys even shooting dogs. As bad
I,
as
you know,
that
I'm not gonna go to that extent. I'm a dog guy. I'm an animal guy.
same. Doesn't mean
You
people
know,
don't do it, but I'm like what do you do?
right now I'm just working with the animal control people
Are
and
you?
they're trying to take care of it. I'm trying to, I got my wife and kids and stuff I got to worry about. I plan on being out back here. I don't want a war with this guy. I just want my stuff left alone. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna invest in a survey and make sure that I know where my stuff is and that's just what I'm gonna do, to stay away from them and hope that I can create a thicket big enough and thick enough that they try to stay out of there. I'm sure they're mostly visual because they can see out into the alfalfa field when the deer are out there. That's when they always go crazy. So hopefully, if I block off their vision, it'll kind of drop that a little bit. That's my goal. That's my hope, at least. My thought process.
Yeah, it looks like they might have some elevation on you there where they can kind of see some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to an old friend a long time ago. He has some dog issues. He moved to the UP and he's having some issues. And I'm like, what do you do about that? I'm not gonna shoot a dog ever.
Mm.
So like, how do you? He's like, well, you scare the heck out of the neighbor, and you make them, realize that you're gonna call the cops, that you're gonna do this stuff, and maybe they'll keep their stuff together. Well, I don't know. The 15 acres had a neighbor where that guy, his dogs were out 6 times a year, every year for 5 years. So I don't know. I'd love to hear any listener feedback or anybody who knows how to control the neighbors' dogs. Um, Even in Ohio, it's worse in Ohio, but
Well,
wherever.
I will be targeting them with traps as soon as trapping
Oh,
season. But yeah, I was told with the animal control that I can target them and catch them because they're not licensed, they're feral, They're not nice. They're pretty vicious dogs.
Oh, is that
Yeah.
right?
Well, I was told by the
Oh,
sheriffs to carry my sidearm in my own property, because of these dogs. And I'm like, dude, yeah, I had one occurrence where they surrounded me. It was the one time I think in my life where I truly thought I'm in some trouble here.
You're
They
kidding me.
surrounded me when I was coming out of hunting with my bow, and like every time I'd turn my back to one, it would come up to my back and my heels, and then I'd swing the bow, and then the next one would come, and I'm like, man, if I trip, I'm in a world of trouble. So I'm screaming my head off like an absolute fool up at this house, and finally, they come out and they're screaming at their dogs and they get them away, and it's like, yeah, there's been a lot of bad blood there, unfortunately, but I'm just gonna stay away and hopefully he stays away as well.
Oh my
yeah.
Atlanta, buddy. I'm sorry to hear that. Wow.
No, yeah, I don't want to bore you with my drama. But
That's
hey,
not
it's
boring.
still a deer haven.
No.
It's still a deer haven.
Well,
So
you're in a great area of the state and you
yeah,
have some cover and you do a good job with pressure. I know all that already, but like you got kids to worry about and stuff like that too. So
yeah,
anyways, I wish you the best on that and I hope you get that taken care of. And
yeah.
yeah,
Thank you, thank you.
follow the laws, use animal control to your benefit. And if they tell you something, do it.
Yep, yep. That's exactly it.
That's wild. Holy cow, Jake. Yeah, I bet you get it figured out. I bet you
I
will.
will. I will. All in time. Due time.
All right. So any other handicaps that you're really dealing with that you're like, hey man, if I could change this property right now, I would do that.
Yeah, so
Um,
some of the stuff I'm targeting, I've done a lot of low ground habitat manipulation, I guess I'll call it. So
swamp
started.
habitat,
Oh, sorry, y'all
swamp,
broke up. Uh-oh.
swamp habitat.
There we go. Yeah,
Oh,
swamp habitat. Yeah,
there you go.
sorry, you're all breaking up. I couldn't hear you for a minute. Yeah, swamp habitat. So for a while, at my in-laws, there's this section of grass that would flood, couldn't farm it, and I'd see the deer just like run through it, and I'm like, this sucks. They just bolt through this. I don't have a whole lot of ground to work with. Got to do something. And I'm sure my in-laws, if he finds out, he'd probably be real mad about this. But this is when I started dabbling with red osier and gray dogwood. There was some of it growing out there, but it wasn't a whole lot. And I just noticed the deer were kind of gravitating there. They were feeding on it. This is, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago or so now, before, there was a ton of information out there. And I'm like, what is this stuff? This is all over this swamp. It's growing in here. Nothing else does. So then I started researching it, find out that you could propagate it super easily, with a few steps. And I'm like, well, here we go. So I went out there with some clippers, and then I actually wound up going around to neighbors' houses, because once I just distinguished the difference between gray dogwood and red osier, by the pith. I started looking around and would just go to neighbor swamps. Hey, you mind if I cut them? And they're like, you are weird. Go at it. Have the swamp brush. So I'd come with buckets of it, and I just start stabbing it in the ground wherever I wanted, and started creating travel corridors in this grass. And I started noticing shapes and edges and stuff like that I like to use, like figure eights. They dig hourglass or figure eight shapes because they bat up against in that like little nook of the bowls, I guess I'll call it, on each side, and they like to, it gives them more edge to walk and feed. So you have that little bit more time, I guess, if you will, when they go from patch to patch. And I just had a ball with it, learning that they don't eat here, at least they don't browse the gray dogwood nearly as much as the red osier. So I would use the gray dogwood as my outer walls of cover, my corridors that I was trying to create, and then I'd put the red osier on the inside. So that was like, some book I was reading, like a browse pocket, if you will, in swamp, and it worked like right off the bat. And I was like, oh, I'm in. This is, going. So it was like, I don't know, probably 25 acres by the time it was all said and done, that I fought the canary grass off. Oh my gosh, that's a battle in itself. So ground prep, I found out, was the key. Prep it the year before. I'll go out there and kill it like twice or three times the size of the patch that I want, to try to keep that damn reed canary grass out for a little while until it can at least get, established up 3 or 4 feet. And then it works good. Just go in there and just stab the hell out of it. So I've noticed that you want the bottom two nodes of red osier just laced off. So, just take the nodes off so that you stimulate root hormones, or rooting out of that. And then you want two sets of two nodes below the ground. that has been really a big key of when you're just stabbing it into wet ground. Again, this is putting stakes into lower ground that kind of holds moisture. I have had zero luck with doing this in up ground, upper
Yeah.
ground that dries off. But and then I just found out how easy it was to do this. And here I am like Johnny Appleseed with buckets of stakes, going to town, and I just love it now. So that's like my unsung little thing that I use. So I've got some canary grass that I'm going to convert that same way, create a wall of great dogwood right on the low ground and high ground threshold, where they can have some wet feet but still drain a little bit, and then create a browse pocket on the inside.
I love that. You have my brain turning over here. I love how you're planting the gray on the outside, as cover. They're not going to browse that as much. And you put the sweet stuff right down the chute. You're getting that's a travel corridor definition right there. Like that's perfect.
Mhm.
Browse pocket. I like that terminology. Um, when you said you laced off the bottom two nodes and then you explain what that means and exactly, like break it way down if you don't mind.
Okay, so for red osier and gray dogwood, you want first year growth. So when you're cutting them, I like to do it in early spring as soon as frost is out of the ground. Again, I'm in lower Michigan. So as soon as the frost is out of the ground completely, you don't have a whole lot of snow. The buds haven't opened up on the red osier. Go out there and get first year growth that's like pencil thick. I've noticed that to be the best out of anything. And even the smaller, larger, isn't as good. Take the pencil thick, newer growth, and then count the nodes or the buds, that haven't opened up. So you want two sets that you're gonna essentially stake into the ground. I like to cut my stakes at 45s, of course, so it goes into the ground a little easier. Right below one set of nodes, two sets. I'll take a razor knife, just a real sharp razor knife, and just easily take off that node off the side. You don't want to break through the cambium layer. You just kind of want to get that node just cut off the bottom set, and then leave two or three sets above ground. You don't want those nodes opened at all. I've found that out that if you wait too long in spring and the buds have opened at all, I've had like very little luck with that actually taking. So that's
That's a
a kind
huge
of a
stake.
yeah, that's kind of a one something that I've known. I've tried to use root hormone. I haven't seen a huge difference in it yet, but I have noticed that I will generally take all these cuttings. So again, it depends on what you're working with. If you can find red osier that's all like young but tall, long, lanky growth, you can get away with 6 foot whips, and put them into some taller grass and they'll live. Of course, you got to cage them or hide them from the deer because they'll get shredded and they'll pull them right out of the ground, with that fresh roots. But normally I do mine about 18 to 24 inches. So that way I have a few nodes above, a few nodes below surface, and I'll just go and I'll put them all in a bucket of water the night before. So I'll cut them generally a day or two before I'm going to go out and put them all out. Put them in a bucket of water, and then I'll find a willow around, and I'll cut a piece of willow because that's a natural rooting hormone, and put that piece of willow in that bucket of water. Let them sit for 24 hours, and then the next day go out and just stab them into the ground. I've got a few videos on my Instagram and stuff of me and a buddy out doing that.
Awesome.
So
Very
what are
nice.
you what are you caging them with?
So I've done just about everything I can imagine. I cut down junk trees, use the branches. I've even gone as far as collecting Christmas trees. That was really how I started. More so at the beginning was collecting Christmas trees after, of course, everybody just throws them out. Throw them in a circle and put 50 or 20 stakes in there, and they aren't going to touch any of them. If you have a little, like I've created a line with the Christmas trees and put stakes in that line, so that way they're going to get up a couple of feet, and they have branches that are all around that the deer aren't going to want to browse down in. So even if they browse them down, they're not going to browse them off and kill them. So that's worked really, really well.
I like that. I like that.
There's a couple of tips here that I just learned from, for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm
Did you?
Absolutely.
resourceful, man. When it came to it, I was like, what can I do that I can, halfway free or, whatever. I didn't want to spend a ton of money because it wasn't my land. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to invest a whole ton of it because, he's a classic farmer, right? He doesn't necessarily think deer are the greatest thing to have around. So the
No.
last thing I wanted to do was tell them that I was encouraging them to bed and stay, near. But now you can clearly see like what I've done, like flying my drone over it. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so cool looking at it 15 years later. Of course it's expanded tremendously on natural growth. So that's helped out tremendously. But yeah, the gray dogwood using as the outside really was a big factor once I finally learned that they browse that a little less. And don't get me wrong, you get a harsh winter, they're still going to browse it, but they definitely will target the red osier 100 to 1.
So the fact that you have that many deer, though, I know the area you're at, ish, and I mean you have a ton of deer. Like, how are these all even surviving?
They're not all. And you got to play the numbers game. Like, don't get me wrong, I've even used like snow fence. I have a buddy that tore down a whole bunch of 2x3 welded wire fence, so it was all junky and rotted. It doesn't matter. It keeps the deer off. So I use that. Um, I'll use anything and everything that I can just to keep them off of it. But generally, I'm using some type of natural, cutting down a tree, cutting down some junk, and using the tops. I had my property logged off a few years ago. Select cut some trees out of it, so I'm using all those tops. I'm saving some of those tops to pull out into some of that switchgrass as well. For bedding structure and same thing, cages in that when I'm going to be putting some of these oak seedlings and stuff in. There's a huge cage for me to drop in 10 or 12 oaks and hope and pray 8 make it. I'm kind of one of those, like, I guess, Andy's out in space. Oh, now he's on the Golden Break Gate. Sorry, just
Andy's a big
squirreled
San
me.
Francisco. He's a big San Francisco guy.
But yeah, I kind of try to shoot the numbers game as well, because trying to protect them from all those deer and trying to cage everything it's just not feasible, or it's just too expensive. So in certain areas, I'll put 1,000 stakes in and hope 100 make it. And
I'm the same way as you. That's how I operate. I don't move. I move too fast to do things probably the perfect way. So I'd rather do kind of your operation. Um, what I thought was interesting though is planting them before any of the buds start to do anything. That's interesting. That's a big deal. What was your percentage win versus loss on that ish, if you had to guess?
if I had to guess, I
Again,
would say
we're not biologists here, folks. So just to say, I'm just curious. That's a great tip.
Yeah, I'd say once I started figuring out all the little nuances, I'm at probably about 70%.
That's
And
really
to me,
good.
out of a cutting and a stake, that's very good. But
In a
again,
very high deer density area.
very high deer density area. But
Very.
again, I'm in, a prime soil moisture content, if you will, for it as well. That
Mhm.
reed canary grass root structure is insanely awesome. That peat is insanely awesome for this stuff. So I can guarantee you're going to have some issues if it's drier, of stakes. I've heard of people having, the red osier be fine with rooted plants or whatever. I have not experimented with it, because if I was to put that on the high ground, it'd just be plowed up. So
Yeah.
I haven't got to do that yet, but I will be. That's one of my goals. I will be rooting my own red osier right here, and some of my stuff, and trying it and going and experimenting.
I can't wait to see your actual plan. Andy, do you have reed canary on your farm by the swamp?
Minimal, very minimal.
Is it?
Yeah, there's a little bit back there, back where that kind of where that spring's at,
Yeah.
but that's about
But if
it.
you can get on it, I'd kill it now, man. I'm not gonna lie, I'd
It's
kill it
kind of
now.
it's back in it's not it's only in a oh shit. I mean not even a quarter acre little spring. We got a spring in the middle of the valley back there that feeds the creek, and it's around that. But that's the
Yeah,
only spot I got it.
I was just
it's
curious, and if it's not, prominent, you haven't had to deal with it much. I had it on the 15 for sure. And guys always talked about how hard it was to kill. I killed it with Roundup the first time I tried it. I also had a bunch of willow seedlings and red osier seedlings fail because I didn't kill the grass first. I just plugged it in there back when
yeah.
I was learning like the rest of us here. We're all learning. But then when I did, I used Roundup and it worked great. So I wanted to see, how you take care of your reed canary. If there's any special tricks you use, because I've seen a lot of guys in our habitat chat group or wherever complain about, man, this reed canary, and you just mentioned it too. Kill it now. Like, what's your
I
best success?
It's not that I guess it's not that it won't kill it. I've just had it encroach back in so fast, you know, like when
Gotcha.
you're only killing off like a 2 foot square area or something like that. Within 2 years, it's completely covered over, you know, and
Understand.
filled back in. It's not necessarily that the problem is because I can't kill it all. I have such a vast amount of it that I'm gonna have to deal with it in some way, shape, or form. Which don't get me wrong, in the summer it is so awesome. I have so many deer in it. It's fantastic, but we all know as soon as it frosts and it browns, it's laying flat basically, and the deer aren't, you know, in it anymore. So that was again some of the reasons what drove me to the red osier and gray dogwood was because I saw that it was holding up the grass. It was the structure. So the deer were bouncing from each one of those little pockets because that was the only cover they had. So initially I started with, I'm just making cover. I didn't have a clue that they were browsing it so hard until it was like, wait a minute, oh, this is all chewed off. They're specifically targeting this. And then I found the times of year they were doing it, and I'm like, oh, we're in like Flynn, you know, late muzzleloader. They're gonna be in this so thick. So that's what I like to do is once it's late muzzleloader season, post up and watch over some red osier fields, and they'll be in there.
There's no
All the
such
corn
thing as
stuff,
muzzleloader
beans and stuff.
anymore, though, is there?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, you're right. I can't
Sorry,
say
no, I don't
much.
want to go down that I don't want to go down that
Yeah.
rabbit
we
hole.
can, we can, we might extend the podcast another hour. Maybe we should. Um, one quick thing I wanted to get on the swamp habitat before we totally derail. Willows, any hybrid willows, streamco willows, you done anything with that sort of stuff in your marsh?
Yep, yep. I've messed with I guess I'm not exactly sure the type of willow. It's they were from what I was told, some tree salesman way back in the day in the 70s or something like that came around, you know, saying, "Hey, these willows are great. You plant them in the low ground, it'll dry it up so you can pasture cattle on them." Well, it did. It did what they said, and they had a bunch of them, so it dried up
Willow.
that section of ground enough that they cattled it, you know, pastured it for a long time until the trees started dying off. Nobody planted them back in. And then of course now it's wet again. The creek beds aren't maintained, so it's not, you know, flowing like it should. So that's why it's backed up again. But that's what made me start, you know, like, well, here there's a few of them still growing. I hear that willows, you know, propagate, like drop them in water and they start growing. So that's
Easier
what I
than
started.
dogwood. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So that's why I started messing with that and getting a few of those going, and you know, just to create something, you know, some kind of structure out in the middle of a sea of grass that's knee high in the, you know, hunting season. So yeah, and then on my property now, I actually went to a habitat day with one of the local, you know, Facebook groups, and met a bunch of nice guys out there. And somebody had a pile of streamco willows and had taken just a insane amount of cutting. So I'm like, all right, well, here we go. You know, I'm trying them, and some of them were huge, like I mean, 2 inches around, and like these things aren't going to grow. They grew, and I am like blown away that a cutting that large actually grew. So I lined up on my opposite side of the property line for my weird, you know, crazy neighbor. I've got some fence sitters, you know, of course, it's a great spot to be. You can't blame them, but they had cut some holes into my property that I was not too fond of. So of course I, you know, layered that side of the creek with those streamco willow cuttings, and they're doing really, really well. So I'm hoping in the next few years I can make my own cuttings off of that and just continue down this trend of propagating and growing as much as I can right here on the farm.
That's cool, man. The fact that you're doing it like that, that's really cool. You're not, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, if I'm gonna go buy it and then I'm gonna plant it,
Oh,
you know,
don't get
but
me wrong. I'm gonna buy a bunch of stuff too. You know what I mean? But that's my cheap ass coming out here, right? You know, a lot of this stuff is because of that. I'm trying to save pennies for, you know, for other stuff. We all know switchgrass is not cheap, you know, and I'm not looking forward to dropping a pile of coin on that, you know, and herbicides to prep the ground for that and stuff like that. So every penny matters, and who knows, maybe if this, you know, air printing boxes really take off well, like my last few have, be a little source of income right there too of local, you know, local native strains of, I got a pile of white oak, pile of burrs, pile of reds. So it should be pretty interesting.
I think the willows you'll definitely be able to propagate off those.
Hmm.
Um, Streamcos, as far as I know, grow more of a shorter bushier type, where some of the hybrid that I have by my house right now, I planted some rooted as 3 footers, probably 6 to 7 years ago, maybe a half inch in diameter. They are 8 inches around now, maybe
Yeah.
10, and they're
Yeah.
50, 60 foot tall. They block my neighbor's house. It works perfect. I'm gonna start trimming them and probably send them to the patrons or something because like it's getting too much now.
You tell me when, I'll bring the truck and load up.
Come on over, let's cut because
Awesome.
I'm serious. Like it went, and these were potted, but they were potted because it's not a swamp behind my house. It goes up. It's a very well drained soil there. So I took a little more love and care before I got them in the ground. Dude, they're insane. It's
So
insane.
does your variety hold its leaves into, hunting season? Because I do have some other varieties that I was, sold a bill of goods on that, this is the greatest screen wall,
Yeah, I don't
yada
think so.
yada. Yeah, see, and that's because you hear a
No.
lot of people still talking about that, about making screen walls out of these, and I'm going, maybe it's just me. I'm looking at mine going, no, this is no benefit in hunting season to me. Like
You
that's why,
can after enough time, the willow gets thick enough without leaves. It'll get
right? And
nasty, especially if you keep copicing it and cutting it off up top. It'll get nasty, and then you'll have a wall. I've been on people's farms where they have stream co without leaves. That's a wall. So
okay.
there is that down the line, but you have to get it there. The
Well, if
leaves,
you can
no, yeah, I
propagate
wouldn't
from
count
it.
them.
I
Yeah,
mean, if you could take cuttings from it and just keep sticking them right
yep.
next to it and doing all that, that makes sense. So, all right, well, I just guess I just got to cut mine more and stick
Yep.
more in the
Cut them on
ground
top.
and be more
Again,
long game with it. Because yeah, I was like, these things are they're 10 foot tall, but I can see right through the damn things.
keep going, man. You come see mine. We'll formulate a plan. It's nuts, dude. They're so thick. Um, in the wintertime though, you still like it needs. I should have chopped them off with the main leader years ago and let it just But
Push out.
I kind of want to see what it did. I still could do that, but I
Right.
think people those trees are just very very prolific. But I just didn't know if you plant any of that. And I thought we're talking swamp habitat here. Any other shrubs or fruit bearing, mass bearing stuff that you put in the wet ground? Um, anything at all? I know there's some options out there. I just didn't know if you got to that part in your
You
project.
know, I haven't done a whole lot with like actual mass bearing. I've done some messing around with the northern spice bush. That works pretty well in my soils.
Right?
And of course, tamaracks. I love to monkey around with the tamaracks and throw them into the wet ground because they can tolerate it. But yeah, that's going to be more of my journey once I get this swamp birch epidemic on my land here taken care of. Once I get them all out of there, that's kind of the next step forward of what else I can do in there to get some variety in the low ground.
Very nice. Andy, anything sparking interest for your low ground? How many acres is your low ground between your north and south? I'm sorry. Is it north south? No,
Uh
the
yeah,
west side.
no, it's no, it is north south. It is north
Is it
south.
north south?
Yep. No, my house faces west. Um, so it's I don't have a lot. I mean, really, if you really get down, I mean, if you're talking the two hillsides, there's probably 12 to 15 acres, but of actual low ground, I don't know, 3, 4 acres maybe that run that creek bottom up there. So I don't really have with on just the TSI that we've done down there. There's really not a whole lot I got to do other than just keep up on that.
But you have some aspen that you cut pretty hard too, and
True.
that's already going nuts.
Yes.
When I was up there last, I saw that. Um, Jake, you have any aspen on your property at all?
No, no, unfortunately, no, nothing like
Huh.
that.
I had some on the 15, which I was still 40 minutes from you, still in Jackson County, but still a ways away. But shoot, man, up north, even on my 40, there's aspen everywhere. It's interesting. I like it a lot though. Um,
It's one of those trees that you either have it and you love it or you don't. And I mean it's kind of a junk tree for anything but the habitat.
yeah, you have to have some big aspens like on the Northern 70. I don't know if you guys saw that post. I put a post on our Instagram. The logger has been cutting for like 60 years. 50 years. And he says the biggest aspen he's ever cut. He got 7 10-foot logs out of it. And the biggest one, we stacked 6 of them next to each other because the top one kind of snapped. He could have had 7, I should say. And we stacked them all next to each other. We had 6 of them. The base of the stump where he cut it was up to my belly button or my waist. You know,
Unreal.
I'm almost 6 foot. Like to claim I'm 6 foot. I'm actually probably not. But so if you do the math, that's a big aspen, a 3 foot
Yeah.
aspen. So I guess maybe you have to get in some of that northern country to get that bigger stuff. But have you had? I kind of want to shift gears out of the swamp unless there's anything we didn't cover on swamp habitat. I mean, I got scrapes that I put in my swamp after the loggers were in there last. Anything that we're missing on swamps that we want to make sure that you cover on this.
No, I mean I think you covered in a lot of stuff. I'm a big user of the mock vines. I use those coming out of the swamps on the main travel corridors and stuff. But no, I think other episodes and stuff you've covered plenty of it.
Okay. Are you putting those right where it meets the hard ground? The
Pretty
transition?
close,
Pretty
just
close. Yeah.
inside. Yep, yep. Generally, I like to leave that wall just be inside of that wall of thicket, right on the field edge, just because they're gonna hit there right before dark and kind of hold up just a few minutes before they commit out to the field, and it works out pretty well.
I love it, man. Judging by the wall behind you, you might have shot a spike or two. Um, you got some really nice bucks back there. I wanted to make sure I heard a story about how some of your work has kind of came to fruition. And I did not warn you about this, so I'm putting you on the spot here, but I want a good deer story. I mean, we have like 3 weeks and we're shooting deer. Less
Yeah.
than. So
Well,
I want to hear something about one of your big bucks where I'm just gonna like get fired up.
all right. Well, I guess since I am, a huge proponent of, and most of my habitat experience, I guess, is in low ground, I'll stick with the red osier gray dogwood type theme. So in that piece of ground that I kind of converted has a knob in the center of it that's surrounded by autumn olive, and the center of it's kind of open, and the deer bed on it pretty heavy. Well, this buck that's actually over my shoulder right here. I had known him for several years. He always had those just ridiculous brow tines, and around my area, the 8-inch brow tines is pretty uncommon. So he was, pretty easy for me to pick out. All through his life, he carried that kind of um, gene, and so finally, come I don't even know what year it was, 2016, something, whatever. I'm targeting this buck. I've got pictures of him, like he's my dog. It was like unbelievable. I had this deer down. I truly felt that I knew what clump of gray dogwood and red osier he was bedding in this, because it was just to where the certain wind, I could pick it out. He was going to be there. And so I made a setup specifically for it. Well, I begged my wife, because I'm also one of those guys that I'm a big proponent of weather pressures. I watch that stuff. I've taken detailed journals for decades of pretty much all my hunts,
Nice.
like insane, ridiculous, nerd out stuff. And I've noticed patterns of things that other people talk about. And I said, honey, I know it's your birthday. Big Ten is going to be here tonight. He's going to be here tonight. I'm going. She was like, go for it. She is awesome. She knows that this is my passion, my livelihood. This truly creates me, centers me, whatever. She's like, go for it. And no big deal. Well, this buck comes out, and it's like everything I wrote down, right? Well, he just happened to take a little bit slight path where I didn't clear one limb. 20 yards, I got to let this buck walk. And I'm going, 147-inch buck in Michigan. I'm letting walk because I can't get a shot. And he's walking right down that red osier, gray dogwood travel corridor. I mean, just like I wrote, just everything perfect. So I'm kicking myself for not, trying it, but I know it's the right thing to do. Fast forward to, I think it was November 7th. It was, because that is my day. I've shot a lot of big deer on November 7th. Again, everything matches. It's a morning. I call into work. I said, I'm not coming in today. This is the day I'm shooting this buck. I'm calling it. Told my buddy, said it's happening today. Well, 7:30 in the morning, that sucker come just like he was. I was hunting for what I feel is probably 25 yards from where I think he was truly betting, like constantly, because I had
Wow.
pictures all the way around this section he was coming in and out of. So it was like it's impossible for him not to be in kind of this little area regularly. And he died in his bed. He literally, I watched him fall. I shot him at 7 yards, just absolutely, pinwheeled him, watching his fall literally right into the gray wood patch, and went in there. It was shredded with, rubs all over the place, 4 or 5 beds all the way around, from I'm assuming for different winds, to have the back cover. And I remember standing there and looking up at that tree going, I put this in here for this exact situation, and it absolutely like Babe Ruth it. I was just like, it all came exactly how I wanted, and it worked out to a T so perfectly. And yeah, so there he is. He's hanging up 147-inch 10 point.
Round of applause,
Nice.
folks. Man, that's amazing. How'd you get in there that close to where he was better? Maybe it wasn't in his better when you got in there, but like how'd you know where to slide into? And what was the tree like? Did you have a climber? Did you have a hang on? How'd that work?
Yeah, so this was a preset that I set out specifically for him, from years of knowledge of kind of what he was going to do and when he was going to
Nice.
shift. And I set it up in this pretty much the only oak that I could get it into. It was a swamp white, and there's marsh grass all around it, so he's got some good cover. And I said, this is it. This is the killing tree. This is the only tree for anywhere around. He's going to kind of walk by it, use it as a landmark.
Yeah.
But yeah, it worked out perfectly. I glassed him a lot over the summer, kind of figured out what he was doing with the doe group, because I'm kind of a big hunter of doe groups. You know, our land is so broken up, it's hard, at least in my opinion, it's hard to pattern, big mature bucks for too long. So I hunt the does knowing that eventually the buck's going to come back and do what he was doing with that doe group. So that's just how I kind of hunted him, knowing that he was going to come back to that area to look at that doe group come, true rut. So I think I caught him. So it was October 26th, the first time I had a chance at him. I'd seen him like a dozen times prior, but never had a good shot at him. And then that November 7th, I think I finally caught him, after that first doe or in between them does or whatever, when he was out checking that doe bedding, and
Awesome,
that's
man.
his history.
I had a deer die in a bed on my place too. And that nothing feels better than that when they're betting on you. You
Hmm.
actually have them betting on you.
Yep.
Um, because of stuff that you did. Mine was in a treetop from a logging operation that I hired. Here's this gray osier that you planted years ago. No better feeling.
Yep.
Um, how was the shot? How far was the shot? You said what, 7 yards?
7 yards. Yeah. He
Oh
was
man.
basically right underneath me. Yep.
Oh man,
Wow.
that would be
Yep.
amazing. Heck of a deer. I can see him here, and we'll have some of this video clip on YouTube and Instagram and whatnot to see that deer. But man, Michigan, 147-inch deer,
Yep.
anywhere
Yep.
that
Well,
big a place.
one day you have to
Man,
come over and see the rest of them.
I'd love to. That's amazing, man. I think uh, the swamps are just. I love them.
Hmm.
I love them. I don't know if I'd buy a parcel ever that didn't have a swamp in it or next to it. Some of that cover that just people don't go into because they're, lazy and dry, like most of us. I don't want to get wet either. But like when you have that cover, like they know where we don't go.
Yep.
They know where the coyotes don't go very often.
Yep.
Their feet are made for it. Like
Yep.
it's hard to argue that. Then you got a
It's
swamp lion out
unbelievable.
there.
It's unbelievable to me how quiet they can get through it, though. Still, it's just
True.
absolutely insane how they can get through that so quietly, through the mud, the water, the cattails that sound like, the world is ending when I walk through it. And it just blows my mind, and I just love watching them, that just see how they do it and how they work it, and try to use that to my advantage.
You're doing a great job, buddy. How long have you owned that farm for now?
4 years, yeah, just four
Wow.
years. Well, I guess it's coming up on 5. This spring will be 5.
Jeez, congratulations. What a story. Great job.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And it's just getting started too. That's the thing for me is like once this corn gets ripped off this year and some of that alfalfa, I'm going to kill some of that off. I'm going to keep some of it, as a little food plot that's kind of
Sure.
already there until some of the switch gets grown up and stuff. But yeah, just getting started. I'm excited. A lot of work ahead of me though.
Of course. Well, it's also more fun than it is work too. So yeah, I can tell
Absolutely.
you're addicted.
Yeah, definitely. My boy, man, he loves to do this stuff with me, and that's so much fun. He's been helping me plant trees and apple trees all over the place, and just such an awesome feeling to have him out there with me doing it.
I
That's
tell you
great,
what,
man.
there's something. Yeah, that is great, Andy. And there's something about living on your property like you guys both do that I'm a little bit jealous of. You know, I'm not in a bad spot by any means, but I think if I lived on it, I would do way more often. You know,
Yeah,
The
Yeah.
new one's only 25 minutes away versus an hour and 15 for the last one, or three, almost four for the 70. But if I would just do that. Like
Yeah.
that's all I would
And this
do.
in one of the things you mentioned that I didn't get to touch on, and it's actually kind of ties in. You actually, how I got in there and slipped into that. Well, a lot of it was because I live here, and I can literally pop out my back door with the spotting scope. Actually, me and Andy had a podcast one
I
night
saw
right
it.
out my alfalfa and had a stud of a buck come out. While we're out there talking. So I'll sit out there and I'll drive around. Of course, I made some farmer friends that. Go ahead, man. Go out there in your truck and spot, and or whatever. And then I'll drive around in the morning sometime this year. I haven't been doing as much as I normally do, but I call it my velvet tour in the morning. I'll drive around some of the local farms and check out and see what's going on. But that is a big deal too, as well, because again, it goes back to my doe patterning. If I can tell where the does are coming in and out of, I can find that seam, and that's exactly what I did on that buck. Is I found that seam where I could get in between, behind the does and get in before he was coming back, knowing that the does were going to be bedding up and he was going to come look for him, and that's exactly what happened. I just, backdoored him. I just came in the swamp from way, and I am like, I will go out of my way to get in and get out, like ridiculously. I will walk an hour if I have to get around a field that all the deer are feeding in at night or whatever. And I think that's really what truly does it. And I learned that from hunting the same land when a lot of other, there's still other guys that hunt it, but somebody, I kept watching. I'm like, man, you're just pushing these deer. And I could realize how much your entry and exit meant, and then once I was key on that, I think truly it kind of opened the doors. I'm on a 12-year streak of shooting 3.5-year-olds and older in Michigan. And it's like, you got to have that access. If you don't have the access and exit, I get it, it's pat my own back right now, but it's such a key point. You can have all the greatest deer in the
It's
world, the
the point.
greatest. It is. If you're bumping them or winning them, that's one thing though I will kind of going down a rabbit hole. You'll hear people always say, "Well, don't walk with your wind to your back." Well, I have several places that I do that because I know that I can get into where I need to get in. I'd rather blow out this 20 acres or whatever and keep my 50 that I know I'm hunting or whatever and do that where I don't care if the wind's to my back, getting into my stand in the morning if I have to, depending on what the access is. But of course, you don't want to throw the wind over the ag field you're going to hunt. But you hear it all the time. Don't ever, enter into your stand with the wind to your back, or I don't know. I guess I kind of have found holes in that theory.
Well, I think there's holes in that theory because when you get to the stand, where's the wind at?
Yeah, yeah, no, and I'm
That's what
talking
you're
more of
saying.
people like people will say you got to keep the wind on your access. Your wind has to be so perfect on your access. I'm telling you, I have walked past deer bedded. And I'm not a proponent of this. I'm not saying go out there and do this, throw your scent all over everything. But if you have no other way to access it, I've had luck where I can still throw some scent over top of the deer and they don't necessarily completely booger out of there.
Yeah, and that might be some exceptions to how often you're on your place or this and that.
There is definitely keys, yes.
But I think the first deer I shot on the 15, I walked in with the wind in my back.
Hmm.
And I said it on a videos on like Michigan Whitetail Pursuit, or I'm not sure, maybe it's on the old Outdoor Devotion YouTube, but I said that it's gonna be bad getting in, but once I'm in, I'm gonna be good. Word
Exactly.
for word. And that
Yes.
deer came in upwind, scent checking where I parked and the rest of my stands, scent checking all that, thinking he had me.
Yep.
I was already downwind of him and shot him right before he hit my walk-in trail.
Yep.
So there is merit there, and there's a lot of nuances there. I think
Yeah.
for the general, and deer don't like bucks don't like to move with the wind at their back for the most part either, especially in Michigan. So how can you have the wind in your face and expect to shoot them in front of you?
Exactly.
But
Crosswinds.
but it that we're getting a little next level stuff, and for a lot of guys, it's just safer sometimes to just play the wind safe.
Yep.
So
Yep. No,
it's
I
all
think you
different
you nailed it
levels.
right there where, that what you said was exactly right. It's going to suck to get in, but if I can get in there clean, if I can get in there at the right timing, again, off a trail camera, fit photos or whatever, if you can find that half hour to get in there before the deer are around, sometimes it is worth the risk. I guess that's all
Yep.
I was trying to get at with that.
And
I'm
then
risky.
yeah, and know where and time of year matters and know where your footprints are. So when he hits that, make sure you draw before he hits that, right?
Yeah,
So
I think I'm kind of an oddball around that too. I don't use scent killer. I haven't used it for years. I swear that I had more negative reactions off of scent killer in hitting tracks than I have with my scent regiment now. I swear, and I will stand by it. I'm sure there's a lot of people that argue it, but I seriously think that especially the big matriarch does started to figure out the scent of that scent killer. I am serious. I've had so many just nail it, stop dead in their tracks. Sure, they don't blow and go wild crazy, but it puts them on alert. They're looking around, they're noticing things that would have normally not. So now I use dirt. I rub dirt all over my boots and everything before I go in, and I've had really good luck doing it. And I just kind of keep going with that luck, I guess, if you will. I mean, I grind it right into my muck boots. I'll pull it all the way up the side so that there's dirt all over it. So as I'm walking, it's dropping, fresh dirt off. Maybe it's a good cover. I don't know. It kind of is just one of those things mentally. If putting the wind in the right direction, a scent killer sure might save you a hunt or something, but to me, anymore, I will save my money.
Makes
yeah,
sense.
I hear you there. I did, there's a lot of ways to skin that cat, if you will, and there's a lot of things that deer smell that we don't even anticipate.
Absolutely.
Like just opening up the ground when you walk on it. But
Yep.
I love it, Jake. This has been awesome, dude. Really, really appreciate it. We're gonna have to get you back on, I know, in the future. Um, Andy, any last questions from you before I hit him with a rapid fire?
No, hit away, man.
Jake, are you ready?
I am ready, man. I'm kind of fanboying right now, right? With how much Habitat podcast I've listened to. So here we go.
Well, hey man, we appreciate it and happy to have you on here. I love this. And you're just like us, which is the best part. As most of our listeners are. Favorite beverage, go.
Oh, purely sweet tea.
Oh, with sugar, pure sweet.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
I'm a sweet tea guy.
Favorite venison or wild game recipe?
Oh man, I'm gonna have to go with neck roast. Yeah,
Ooh,
neck roast, man. We do the like the dry Hidden Valley Ranch mix with the Lipton French onion soup mix, potatoes, carrots, just the good old fashioned meat and potatoes, man. I love it.
Nice.
haven't heard that lately, and that we're
No,
getting into that season now where the weather's starting to change. Um, if you had to plant one, this, and we might have already hit this now. I'm trying to throw in a new question here, but I'm not that great at it. If you had to plant a new or one tree or shrub right now, what's your go-to plant?
Well, of course, for the low ground, it's my go-to is the red osier, of course. It's a very useful, very diverse plant that just works for a lot of what I've had to do.
Love it. What do you hunt the most out of? Preset stands, blinds, or going mobile like a latitude saddle or something like that?
All of the above except for a saddle. I don't have a saddle. I do the hybrid, mobile version with a lock on. I got the
Yeah,
old school Lone Wolf Alpha.
yeah, I have
But
one of those.
I generally have a lot of presets. That's kind of my basis for early season, where I think I'm, going to go early season, and then I kind of make my adjustments using my mobile setup from there instead of tearing down all my thick stuff. And I've even got several wood blinds, I can shoot bows out of and stuff like that. I've just elevated them this year and moved them around and try to get the kids out with me. That was why I bought those and stuff. But I love it all. It doesn't matter if I'm outside hunting, I'm happy.
I love it. Here's a random question. When you're with the kids or in the elevated blind with the kids, are the windows shut? And what is your go-to distraction method for the kids? I'm gonna start asking
Yep.
this question all the time.
Yeah, windows are shut. Definitely windows shut. I'm actually a window shut guy myself, even when I'm hunting by myself. Yeah,
Shoot.
so windows shut. And then, I'm pretty spoiled with my son. He just likes to be there. So there's very little that I have to worry about distracting him. Every once in a while, of course, he'll hop on the iPad and he
Sure.
likes the farm simulator, so he'll play that for a little bit. But once it's go time, if there's a deer, he's all in, so I don't have to worry about it. My daughter's a little more of the butterfly, but I'll have the iPad for her a little bit. I want to make it at least comfortable with them. I put heaters and stuff out there. I want to make sure that they want to come back out with me, and I want them to understand that it's not just mid-September that is their season. It's a season all season, just like us, not just 2 days in youth season. So
Love it, dude. Love it. Couldn't agree more. Food, water, or cover. You can only pick one. What's most important?
Oh man, this one's kind of hard for me because in ag land, once it's stripped, I have nothing. But in my current situation, in what I'm doing, cover is my lowest hole in the bucket for sure.
Well said. Well said. You sound like a scientist with it depends type conversation there. But I think most people have said cover overall.
Yeah.
I really do think most people have said cover if I had to go back and count. Favorite habitat tool or implement?
Oh man. Everybody says the chainsaw in here, so I'm trying to think of something else. I use a lot of the just like the little handy weed whipper that the head changes. Like a
Ah,
pole saw, the brush cutter. So I use that brush cutter a lot of cutting paths through the swamps, through the cattails and stuff like that. So I'm gonna say that that's a handy little guy to go in there and trim off stuff.
nice. What brand is that? Is that like a steel straight shafted deal?
Yep, yeah, mine's a steel. I
Something
don't
like that?
remember what number it
Yeah.
is, but yeah, straight
Cool.
shaft. You can change the head out to, whatever, all kinds of different stuff, weed whipper, brush cutter, pole saw. Blower, whatever.
I didn't know you could do the pole saw. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
yep.
last but not least, but my favorite tree. You can hunt in it. You can drive down the road and love to see it. You can eat fruit that it drops. You can just see it in your front yard. What do you like?
Oh man. You know what? Just because
Can't
of
say a
everybody,
Buckeye though, because just because.
you're not going to hear that out of my mouth. That's for sure. You always hear everybody go out there. You know what? So I'm gonna just go off the wall. I'm gonna go burning bush, man. They're just beautiful little bushes. They're
Nice.
not necessarily habitat related or anything like that, but everybody else always has the classic white oaks and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna go something a little different, something a little decorative around the house.
I love that, man. I have a couple of those in my yard. Those are very cool.
Yeah.
Um, Jake, that was amazing, dude. I really appreciate you coming on. I've been meaning to get a hold of you and talk to you for a while now. So this is really good to put this all together. And Andy, thank you for getting him on the Deer Camp podcast and what you guys are doing there. That's how I learned about him besides Vitalize and Habitat listenership and everything else. Got to see his face through what you're doing. So really appreciate you both, man. What a great episode. You guys are gonna love this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, I
Hey,
didn't say a
thanks
whole
for
lot,
having me
but
on.
good times. It was Jake, it's always a pleasure, as always, and same Jared.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate you having me on and getting to talk with you guys and all the opportunities you guys have provided to learn. That's my big thing. That's been awesome. Learned a lot.
Appreciate it,
Yeah.
man. If anybody can get a hold of you, maybe they want some vitalized seed, maybe they want to just, bend your brain on swamp habitat. We haven't covered that in a while. This is awesome. How do they get a hold of you? Where are you at?
I'm mostly, more active on Instagram. Jake Hunts Michigan, Jake underscore Hunts underscore Michigan. Jake Bollinger on Facebook. I'm not terribly active there, but we'll probably show a little more activity, I guess, there in the coming years. But yeah, always love talking deer stuff. Always in the little forums, looking around and all that kind of stuff, and in the groups and the habitat group, and love learning from people and helping out when I can.
Oh, we appreciate you, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.